is telling me we are live, and yet nothing is happening. And I
We're going in, first your ad came on. Can you see us?
Okay, I think it's happening. There's only one little problem for the viewers who were there. We're having a few little technical problems. I'm sorry for the delay, but I do believe that we are live at the moment. Yes, I see us both there, Jim. Alan, Jim is one of our moderators.
It's working. My wife's picked it up.
But what I do need is for the moderators to send me the link yet again for our Google page, because I've lost it. And I'm here with Alan Ross Huguenot. We are live. We're going to stay with you and answer your questions. I'm planning to keep this going until about 12:30 or 1:30 my time for another 80 minutes or so. And if our moderators would be so kind as to send me a new link to the Google Docs page where the questions are being posted, because it has vanished on my screen.
That could be the situation that we have. Too many things plugged in at once.
I know the windows have just disappeared, but it's a pleasure to be with you, Jim. I had a wonderful interview with you that was broadcast on Friday. I now have the questions up and they're coming in. So it's really exciting. I hope many of the people who are with us now on the live stream had an opportunity to watch that interview that we released on Friday. So here's a question from Maria Pia Giacconi, who writes, "Dear Alan, I think my fear of death has decreased as I find myself increasingly accepting the inevitability of it. Is there any way you can suggest to be even more prepared to accept it?"
Well, do your research with the International Association for Near-Death Studies. We have a lot of people who are reporting what they have seen on the other side. Just study all these things. So what Pim von Lommel has to say, he studies people under cardiac arrest who have had a near-death experience. All of us will tell you the same thing. Life doesn't end. You just step out of this body. You just leave it like an old rag. You take it off like a coat, and you're there on the other side. And listen to what these people are saying. They've been saying this for 2,500 years that we know in recorded history. It's through an open door. You just go on. We don't cease this business of, oh, because the body is dead, the consciousness must be dead, is just an erroneous thought. It looks that way, that we can't talk to them anymore here in the physical, but they go on. So listen to the spiritualists who are talking to people on the other side. Listen to the near-death experience people. Look at the science behind all this, and you will become more and more convinced that what I'm saying is absolutely real. What I say in my book is I think I got killed in a motorcycle wreck, and that's the best thing that ever happened to me, because I discovered the other side, that it's real, that we do go on, we do continue to exist. So if you feel fear of death, the best thing to do is study this stuff. 70% of the population believes in an afterlife. It's only the ones who absolutely have to have it proven to them who are skeptical and don't believe.
Okay, here's a question coming in now from Michelle Parker, who writes, "I've made many mistakes in my life that have led me to where I am now, 61 years old, broke and disabled. I do not want to come back here again. Do I have to? Also, do you have any messages from my family?"
Well, I don't have a message from your family. The question of do I have to come back here again is based on the idea that people have that we reincarnate over and over and over and over. That's just a speculation. It's true that we have children who remember past lives, so obviously they have reincarnated in another lifetime. But that doesn't mean necessarily that everybody does that every time. It doesn't mean that we have to follow that particular pattern. We make all these assumptions here in the physical that, oh, somebody was reincarnated, therefore we do that over and over. That doesn't follow. That's somebody's speculation out there. So whether you come back the next time, probably the way I understand it, my best understanding of this from all the research I've done, is that's going to be up to you. And there's the thing that everybody thinks, oh no, it's up to God. No, it's up to you. Maybe you need to rethink that idea of just who is God.
Oh, JF says, Alan, I too have had my share of unique experiences. It seems to me that individual identity survives, but I am not sure of the form. Are we more of a chapter in a book or the book?
Our consciousness is the book, and what you're experiencing here in the physical is a chapter. I think that would be the best way to say that. And you're just moving on to the next stage or the next chapter. And unfortunately, I didn't spend a long time there in a near-death experience. I didn't get to become a naturalized citizen and all that. I just was there for a little while. I got a glimpse. And those of us who have been working with the near-death, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, all of these people have just had a glimpse. We know that there's something over there. And we know through spiritualism that we can talk to people, consciousnesses that still exist. So just exactly how physical we are and things like that, most of the evidence that we have is more speculation than it is anything else. People get a little evidence and then they speculate way out here and they extrapolate out and have a whole theory about science. Science is looking at what is and seeing what that means. Well, when we go to see what it means, we often use all the assumptions we already have about life, which are assumptions, they're presumptions. We think that, well, one of the presumptions that a lot of materialists have is everything is physical, everything's made out of matter. And if we try to force that assumption into our speculation, we're going to come up with the wrong answer. So I hope I've answered your question.
Sheila Rower says, is it possible to communicate with someone who is still living but has dementia and is unable to communicate?
Apparently, I would say yes. We have a lot of people who communicate with like animals and they get what the animal is doing. And they're very good at that. And the animal doesn't speak our language or anything else. I believe, yes, you can communicate very much with someone who has dementia. They're just not able to operate the physical body that they have. Their consciousness is still there, just like a deceased person's consciousness is still there. This person with the dementia. So go to them, talk to them, tell them what you think, tell them what you feel, and try to yourself work sort of like a medium. Try to feel what they're saying back to you. They're going to be responding to you if you're listening. And people say, how do you do that? Well, it's like mediumship. How do you do that? You listen to your own psyche inside, your own heart. Use your heart rather than your intellect. If you use your intellect, you'll start doing analysis, you'll start becoming a scientist. You won't be the medium. So use your heart. Go and talk to the person who has dementia. Say, hi, I'm here, I'm in the room, I'm with you. Go ahead and communicate with me what you feel. And then listen to your heart. And you'll get messages back from them. That's the best you can do. It's just like talking to somebody on the other side.
That was beautiful. Tao Now says, can you discuss the measurement problem in physics in regard to consciousness producing matter?
You want me to discuss that? My book goes into it quite deeply. It's difficult to most people don't even know what the measurement problem is. And basically, they need to go and see a few videos about the double slit experiment and the delayed choice double slit experiment. And so this takes a lot of time. The answer to your question there would take me about 25, 30 minutes.
We'll have
So-
to do a separate program on that.
Yeah, I don't want to. Don't want to do that here today. I suggest you read my book. I got about as definitive as I could be in there, and you need several chapters of it to get the answer to that one.
And here from Ethan Margalith, who really switches gears. He says, "Are you connecting listeners with their loved ones who passed away? Are you able or willing to do that now?"
I have a lot of requests to be online to do that, and I've stopped doing that because the people who come online don't really respect what I do. I've had them say things like, "Oh, you just got W. That was her initial. She went by that initial. That was her name." And yes, that's your mother's name. She goes by W. And then they say to me, "You just got her initial." Well, my God, I did get her initial. See that that's her talking to you. Or the other one I like to say, I said to the woman, "I've got your mother here, and she liked cooking." And she said, "No, she didn't. She was a professional cook her whole life. She hated it." Now, wait a minute. I told her she was a cook. She didn't even hear that. And so the average public out there does not respect what I'm doing as a medium. They want me to call up their relative on a telephone and say hi, ask specific questions, and get specific answers. It doesn't quite work like that. I have to use my heart and my feelings, and I come through with their name or their initial or that they're a cook, and they reject the information. And I just don't need that kind of stuff from the world out there. So I don't do it for the public anymore. I just stopped. I don't need that kind of disrespect. And they say, "Well, gee, I paid for this. Where is it?" Well, they're just paying for my time. They're not paying for, I don't charge them to make a profit. I just say, okay, if I'm going to take the time to do that out of my life, this is what it costs. And they don't understand that. They want it all to be for free. It's not like that. I have a life too. I make money when I'm working, and I'm going to take time from work to be a medium. People don't respect that. The world just doesn't respect it. So no, I don't do that, but I do it for free at the Spiritualist Church. So
They'll have to come to your Spiritualist church. And Carolyn asks, "Do our departed loved ones come around and try to influence us? If so, what are some signs to look for?"
okay, so you have your mother or something, she likes certain things. Look for those things. She likes butterflies, you'll see butterflies. Look for those things. Do they try to influence you? Yes, they would love to influence you, but they can only do that if your heart is open. If you're doing analysis and sitting around saying, "Okay, tell me what to do next," they can't do that. They can move your heart. So you come into a situation. Should you go right or left? Should you be nice to this person or not be nice? And all of that kind of stuff. You're into a situation. They're trying to influence you. Listen to your heart. Your heart will tell you which way to go, this way or that way. And if you can just do that, they can talk to your heart. They can't talk to your analytical mind. They don't talk to the scientist here. They talk to the medium here. Okay. And that's what they're going to do with you. So open your heart, open your soul, listen, and you will begin to see stuff all around you. Suddenly things will show up. Your mother liked bluebirds. Well, bluebirds will show up. This kind of thing just happens. And then you say, "Oh, that was just a coincidence." Well, like Gary Schwartz does, he talks about coincidence in one of his books, the Serendipity, I think it's called. And he's talking about the odds of these coincidental things happening. And when you start getting 5 or 6 or 7 coincidental things coming along, it takes, for that to happen by chance, takes twice the length of the universe, 14 billion years. So it takes 28 billion years for that to occur statistically. And yet it happened. There it was. And then you have to say, then it wasn't a coincidence. It was, in fact, them doing something. But you have to be open to look for it. And the skeptic will say, "Oh, BS. You say that you see a butterfly and that's your mother." Yeah, could be. Okay, if you see lots of butterflies, if the butterflies chase you, follow you around, you should, Suzanne Giesemann talks about this, the butterflies following her around. You know that the person who is bringing that butterfly is actually there with the butterfly.
Um, since you mentioned your spiritualist church earlier, Alan, if people wanted to see you in that church, where would they go?
They could go online to Celebrate Life, Spiritualist Community, San Francisco. In fact, I would have been the medium this morning. Somebody else is doing it because I'm talking to you, Jeffrey, and I would have been the demonstrating medium. Sheila's the demonstrating medium this morning, and she's just fine. But I had to cancel a mediumship. I will be speaking there next week on the 16th. I'm supposed to be the person speaking. So that's where they can, I sometimes give the address and I sometimes do mediumship. They can get a message there, and we do it online. It's on the Zoom because right now we don't meet at the church. So they can pick me up online. And I've done that where we're online. I'm giving a reading to somebody in Maryland, and they getting the, we get the name of their mother and all that kind of thing that comes through.
Here's a question from Chris Scarpantonio, who says, is there a way to switch from a heavily intellectual way of thinking to more with the heart type of thinking?
Yes, it's called stepping into the power. It's called a shift. Most of what you're seeing me do right now online is the professor, the intellectual side of the thing. If I become a medium, I'll tear up, I'll get real emotional, and then the shift takes place as you go over into your heart, and you stop using your analytical mind and you shift to that other way. It can be learned through meditation. It's good to meditate. It's helpful. But one of the things I learned at Arthur Findlay College, a teacher there that was one of the teachers I disliked the most. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there. She taught me one thing: you just do it. You just shift. And I learned to just shift. I can be moved to being a medium, and then I can move back. And so to open your heart to do that, you just have to turn off your analytical mind. I know all the laws of physics, and they all say that what I'm talking about as a medium couldn't possibly exist according to materialist science and the standard model. And you just have to turn that off. Lucky for me, I was killed in a motorcycle wreck, so I got to go to the other side. So I know that it's there, so it's easy for me to say, aha, I can just do that. For some skeptical scientists who haven't been killed, it's a little harder. They haven't been out of body to go there and see that. And so when we talk about out of body, they say, oh, BS. But no, it is BS. It's their belief system. And that's what it is. It's their BS. If they will allow their belief system to be open, they could go there too. And we can all go there. It's just being open and deciding, I'm going to listen to my heart. I'm not going to listen to my mind. As a medium, we still have to do a little bit of listening to the mind because we're going to talk. And for instance, if I was doing mediumship online right now, because we're online, I can't say anything that's inappropriate to be on. I can't swear. I can't do any of that kind of stuff, even if that's what's coming through from the other side. So you have to keep a little bit of the intellect going, but not the whole thing. You don't have to be analytical.
And a similar question, Peter Deutsch is asking, are there any indications that you're getting a message from your heart as opposed to your normal internal dialogue?
Yes. It usually, when I'm demonstrating in front of a church and and I'm getting a message for somebody that's in the audience out there, and there might be 100 people in the audience, and I'm getting a message, and it seems to be for a person over here. What comes to me often is, Alan, where are you getting this shit? And excuse the language there, but yes, that's exactly what comes in my mind. Where are you getting this shit? Well, that's because it's not my own thought. And realizing it's not my own thought, when I have that feeling, I'm realizing this thought's coming from somewhere else. It's coming through from somewhere else. So then I say the thing that's coming through from somewhere else. And then the person in the audience says, yeah, that's it. That's right. That's right on. And that's how it comes through. Where are you getting this? And it has that feeling. So when you are feeling like, I don't know where I'm getting this idea, this just isn't me, it's probably one of your relatives who's deceased trying to tell you something, and it's coming through your heart. That's where you're getting that left field thought that's coming in. Where are you getting this? That's when the message is, it just doesn't fit in your normal analytical position. And there it is. This is coming through. That's where you're getting it from. And that's when you know that it's coming from the other side. Mm. Now, if you hear voices that say, drive off the freeway, that's not the same thing. You got a problem then. But if you're getting a message that you don't know where it's coming from, and it's a proper thing to do, it's a good thing, that's what it is.
Naman Jane asks, why do some people act evil even if the higher self is truly good?
Why do we have Hitler? Okay. This is a tough one to answer. You know, the church says, when you say, how come is there evil in the world? You're not supposed to question God and ask him why he made evil. It's a perspective. How come some people are evil? It's our perspective. And this is this difficult one for people to hear, but I'm going to use it anyway because it's a very good example. Hitler thought getting rid of the Jews was a good thing. Okay. His definition of good was we get rid of the Poles and the Jews and everybody we don't need, and we make Germany one big place again. Poland was in the way between Prussia and Germany. Get rid of Poland. That to Hitler was a good idea. Okay, we, with our viewpoint, if you don't exterminate whole, genocide and everything else, we say that's a bad idea. It's a perspective, what's good and what's evil. Why are evil people evil? Because they think what they're doing is a good thing. ISIS thinks getting rid of killing the infidel is a good idea. ISIS wants to kill all of us, get rid of all those Christians and all those other people who aren't in the faith. Well, they're totally abusing the system, but that's what they think is a good thing. So you have to understand that evil is a perspective. It's all good, and evil is a perspective. People say, well, God made the devil. No, I don't think so. I think we made the devil, and we made God into this person. We made him into an individual. And I don't think it's like that. And it's just one of our interpretations.
William Tell asks, do we all have spirit guides?
I believe we all have spirit guides. I believe that not everyone listens to theirs. The spirit guides typically are what in the physical we would think they are relatives, but if you think about spirits moving through the universe, moving through consciousness, individual consciousnesses moving through eternity, those spirit guides may have been our relatives at one time. They may have been a higher power at one time. They may have been what we identified as an angel at one time, but they're individual consciousnesses which are basically in agreement with us, who stand in approximately the same evolved position, philosophically evolved position, if I can use that description for it. We're moving through an education process. We can all see that obviously the physical world is an education process. I hear from Francis Banks in that book that I mentioned quite often, The Testimony of Light by Helen Greaves. Francis Banks, talking back from the other side, says we continue in a progression in an education system like this. Well, if we're moving along in that, those guides are the other spirits, the other consciousnesses that agree with us, that are on the same wavelength that we're on, and they're there for everybody. So even people who are not very well evolved, you might call them a new soul, they have spirit guides. And even those who are very evolved have spirit guides. We have people who are at our level within the conscious universe who are trying to help us if we will just open to them. We just have to open up, and it'll, you know, when you're faced with a situation and you're going forward into it, you really do know what the right thing to do is. And you should follow that. And if you follow that, that's your spirit guide talking to you. If you think of it as your higher self, there's many ways to think of these things. If you understand that each of us is part of the larger consciousness, each of us is like a grain of sand on a beach. And then that beach, all that sand together is the big consciousness we want to call God or the force or whatever, that beach full of sand. We're each there together. And those other grains of sand are there to help us, and they gather around us. Think of it that way. It's very difficult to picture this. We want to put it into materialistic terms and make it something we can see and hold and see that, making a frame around that. We want to put it into a standard model. We want to make it a certain, something we can conceive. And it's bigger than us. It's bigger than we can conceive in this physical life. But the guides are there, whether you want to call them guides, angels, God, higher power, whatever you want to call them, your relatives, they're there. And there's many ways to see them. I see some of my guides as relatives. I see some of my guides as former scientists, entities that passed on, and they come that way, and they'll bring you things. Is it me? Is it my higher power? Is it the universal consciousness? I can't say exactly because we don't know yet. We can't envision what's there in terms of what we know here. But I can tell you this, it's there, and they're there.
Paulie asks, can people who have passed see us and hear us?
Yes, but grandma's not in your bedroom when you're having sex. Okay? They can see you and hear you. They don't have the same value systems there as we do here. And they're not sitting there shaking their finger at us saying, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. They're not there like that. They're there to help us. They realize we're coming through our very difficult time in the physical. They've been here themselves, and so they know all about all the temptations and troubles that we have. And so I just have to say, they're not shaking their finger and they're not watching you have sex. Okay, so relax. I used to worry about that, when I was a little kid, a teenager, and first became sexually interested. And I thought, oh, grandma's dead. She's going to be watching me, and that bothered me. That I worried about that. So I wanted to say that to them.
Here's somebody called Eccentric Writer who asks, what are the subjective qualities that differentiate real communications from imagination?
Oh, that's a toughest one for almost every medium. That's why we go to places like Arthur Findlay College and we fly over there and spend all the money to go there to learn to do evidential mediumship. Because telling the difference between your imagination and what spirit is telling you is very, very difficult. Think for a moment about a spiritualist artist who draws pictures of the spirit. So they're going to imagine, okay, the person has a beard, and a long chin, and this person has dark curly hair, and they're going to start drawing these. All of that has to come through their imagination. But when they get done doing the piece of artwork, somebody in the back stands up and says, that's my father, and brings up a photograph, and it looks just like the guy he drew. And, they don't even know each other. The artist is having to take that imagination and put it on paper, and knowing the difference between what's coming from the other side and your imagination is the most difficult thing a medium does. And as I said a little bit earlier, I said, I begin to identify it by where is this coming from when I know it's not something I would imagine. Where is this coming from? Then I know I've got something from the other side. So then I say the thing, I get a crazy name, that I've never heard this name. I did one recently online, and it was for a friend that I know her, but I didn't know her grandma's name, and I think the name was Ruark, something like that, Ruan. And I had to get this name, and this name was a horrible name, Ruan, but that was her grandmother's name. It was Icelandic. I had no idea that she was Icelandic. She's here in San Francisco. I got this name. Well, where are you getting this name? And where are you getting a silly name like that? That doesn't make any sense to me, but it certainly makes sense to her. And so that's how the feeling comes in. I don't know where this is coming from in my imagination. So that's the way you tell the difference. Your own imagination will say, oh, your grandma's name is Mary. No, it's Ruan. Your own imagination will give you all kinds of stuff. So what we try to say as mediums when we're doing mediumship is if we get half of the stuff right, we're batting 500. We're way better than Joe DiMaggio and those guys. We're batting 500 if we get half of the stuff right, and the other half's our own imagination that came in there. So I say, when you go to a medium, don't say, you're wrong. My mother hated cooking, when I say she was a good cook or she enjoyed cooking. Or just take half of it. The cook, she was a cook. Okay, take the half that's real. I didn't say she was a nurse. I didn't say she worked for the telephone company. I said she was a cook. So I must have got something right there. And that's what you need to do with all of this stuff when you're working with the other side, is realize about half of what you get may be your own imagination, but the other half is them. And this is why we like to work with strangers. We mediums love to work with a stranger in a demonstration situation, because we'll get something that we know nothing about, and that person will bring, say, yeah, that's true, that's true, that's true. No, I can't take this, but I can take that. And they can take at least half of what we say, and sometimes 85, 90% of it. Depends on how good the connection is.
Mm-hmm. Alan, in our conversation that was released on Friday, you talked about the life review process. And the impression I had from that conversation is that everybody, once they die, has to go through something like that. They have to look at what their life was about and see it from the perspective of everybody with whom they interacted. And here I have a question from Emmy Vatness, who says, what do you believe happens to us after we die? So to add a little context to the question, do you think everybody goes through that life review process?
Apparently so. Okay, apparently so. Apparently they do all go through this process. The near-death experience, it occurs probably more than 50% of the time, about 70% of the time. There's different things that happen in different near-death experiences. But what happens in the near-death experience is it's almost an instantaneous thing. It just flashes by, because that person is going to go back to the real life. But what Frances Banks said through that book, The Testimony of Light, she says, you get to review it in great detail when you get to the other side, and you're going to stay there. And she said the two blueprints thing, she has the what you should have done or could have done and what you did, and you get to look at the two blueprints. And for someone like an SS officer, that's pretty rough, like here's what you could have done and here's what you did. And so you have to look at the evil that you did versus the good you could have done. And for some people, it is, Frances says, it's very searing. It just sears them. And so they can't hardly look at it. And so they take an earth time, they take years before they finally get around to doing their life review, because of how awful their life was. They made their living as a murderer or a drug dealer. And they have to look at this when they get there. They have to review, how did the other person feel in all this? If they were a drug pusher and they're making their living and their money off of people's having a heroin problem, you got to look at that and say, they're going to have to review this. They're going to have to look at that and go through that. That's going to take them a lot longer than somebody who was a sweet person who worked as a nurse in the hospital and just took care of people and was loving to everybody. Their review is not going to take a long time, because mostly they're going to be able to know what the other person felt, because they did everything from the heart. And if you do everything from the me first, I need money, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to, screw everybody else, well, you've got a lot to cover. And so, yes, we all go through a life review. It's not hell, it's not punishment, it's not retribution, it's us making the judgment. And we're the one who has to make the judgment finally about ourselves. And that's a hard one for most people. They want to have a God or somebody else be the judge. You're the judge. And when you know that, when you get that, you take that into your heart, you'll live differently. You realize each move you're going to make with each person out there, you're going to be judged for this. That life review is about you knowing how the other person felt when you did whatever it was you did. And so knowing that you're going to have to feel the feeling that the other person had, like that SS officer who ran the death camp, and he did that to all those people. He has to know how each of those people felt. What a thing to have to work through. That would be awful, having to feel every one of those deaths from the other side, having to feel how all those people who were in the gas chamber at Auschwitz, sorry, all the people in the gas chamber being gassed, and that guy has to feel how they felt. What a horrible thing. So do we make heaven or hell? Yes, we do. We make our own heaven or hell because we have to go through this life review. And the near-death experience has shown that it's real. We've been reading about the life review since Plato, but now we know scientifically from the near-death experience that the thing is real. It's real. From what Francis Banks says, it can be excruciating. So knowing that, we ought to live a little bit better life here so that we have a little less to deal with over there.
I have a question from Borsu, who asks, how do you move on after an event when you are not in agreement with life's choices? I guess something happened to you, and now how do you move on from that?
You have to look at the good side of the thing. Hard to do, I realize that. As I say early on in my book about the new science of consciousness survival, the best thing that ever happened to me was I got killed in a motorcycle wreck. Now you have to think that's a pretty evil thing to have happen in your life. I still have steel in my leg. I have, you can't see it here, but I have this, but I don't have one on this side. I've got scars all over. I've got scars here on my wrist. It was pretty traumatic. I was in the hospital for 33 days. They wanted to put me in the nut house. All of those things happened. I look at that as the best thing that ever happened to me. It's how you look at something. You say, oh, these terrible things happen in my life. Everything's been a disaster. Well, what disaster? Look at your disaster and say, how does this disaster help me? Why was I given this obstacle to work through and to overcome? Why did this happen to me? Start looking at that. Instead of, oh, why did God do this to me? Think, why did I do this to myself? If maybe I'm the consciousness, why did I want this experience in my life? And it begins to make a lot more sense. And then you look at it and say, it's all good. You begin to find the good in this evil thing that happened. I found a lot of good in being killed. Most people wouldn't. And that's what I'm trying to say to you. Look at what's happened. Try to change your thinking and your viewpoint about what happened. I've met people who lost their legs and learned to walk on those nice little springy things that they have, and they like it better than they did when they had their legs. They're walking around on those springy little things that they make now. You have to look at what's good and in what happened. And it's all good if you can just see it that way. Then life becomes pretty simple. So whatever's happened to you, you may have be dying of cancer. I don't know. whatever's happening to you, look on the good side of it. I can tell you this, if you're dying of cancer, it's really nice when you get to the other side.
Vox Flash asks you if you as a medium are able to tap into the thoughts of the living or predictions of the living.
Yes, we do that a lot. In fact, we train as mediums to not do that. We call that psychic. A person can walk into the room and we can just sit there and read them from across the room and get probably 50% of what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And when we do that in a reading, you charge the person to sit down and have a reading. And so you're having this reading and you can just tell them, oh yeah, you're thinking about buying a car and yeah, you're going to get a car. You can do all kinds of psychic reading like that, but you want to read as a medium, you want to read from the other side. And we worry about the fact that did they walk in here remembering that their mother died and that their mother's name was Mary, and we sit down and read their mind and say your mother's name was Mary and she's talking to you from the other side. Are we reading their mind or are we reading Mary's mind on the other side? And so that are we doing it psychically or are we doing mediumship? It's all the same thing. We're doing this ESP reading of minds, but we're reading the mind that's sitting in front of us at the table, or we're reading the one across the way. William James spent a long time on this, working with Lenora Parker. She was a fantastic medium. She could be reciting something while she's writing two different letters with two different hands. I mean, this is Lenora Parker. She could just do all this in a trance. And William James studied her in great detail. And what he was always looking for was the fact that could be a verifiable fact that nobody knew, that nobody in the room knew. And then he get to the situation where, but the cousin across town knew. And so was Lenora reading the mind of the cousin across town. He could never get out of this picture. William James was never able to resolve that issue working with Lenora Parker.
Piper. It was Lenora.
I'm sorry, Lenora Piper. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. Got Parker.
Not a problem.
Yeah. And so he couldn't answer that question. And somebody, if we're going to verify the thing, if we're going to know to verify it, then it had to be known. So he could never discover the thing we didn't know that we could later verify. It's like, whose mind was the medium reading? And that's the big question. So what we do is sometimes I'll get a message and I'll get something that the sitter, the person getting the reading, doesn't know. And I get an answer and they later verify it with someone else across the country or across the world somewhere. And then you have to say, okay, there's 7.5 billion people in the world. I didn't go pick the brain of 7.5 billion people to find this one fact that the cousin knew in New York. And that's what you have to do. At some point you have to say, that's too unbelievable. I don't think Alan can read the mind of the cousin out of the 7.5 billion people. And once you get to that and you realize the elegant answer, the good engineering answer to this thing is that grandma was talking to me, was putting the feeling in my heart. She doesn't talk in my ear, but she puts a feeling in my heart. And that's what actually was taking place. At some point, you have to become rational in your thinking. I hate the skeptic who always says that it's ESP. You're not really reading the dead person. You're using ESP from the person sitting in the room. Well, those skeptics don't believe in ESP anyway. They want to use that as an excuse for how I'm not doing it.
Here's a question from Razwan ul Haq, who says, Salam upon you from England. And his question is, if consciousness and matter are interrelated, as we mentioned in our previous interview, do you think collective human thoughts can affect the current pandemic?
Yeah, very definitely. Collective human thoughts are affecting the pandemic. One of the collective human thoughts is they're all afraid of it. It's going to kill about 2% of the population. And those people, most of them that are dying from it, were compromised already. They had advanced cancer, they had respiratory problems already, they had diabetes. they already had one foot in the grave, and it's going to push them the rest of the way in the grave, and that's who we're protecting. But this mass media fear created by CNN and Fox News and a few other places, that's what you're talking about, consciousness, everybody thinking something, and the whole world's scared to death. So can we change that? Yeah, stop being afraid of it. And all of a sudden, everybody will throw the mask down and just walk around and have a regular life again. As long as everybody's, oh my gosh, I'm scared, I'm going to die. Well, I'm not scared, I'm going to die. I'd like to, you know. I mean, I'm not going to commit suicide, but I wouldn't mind being on the other side. So death doesn't scare me. And I look around at the whole world scared to death of COVID-19. And I have to wear a mask everywhere I go, and I have to do all this stuff, and I have to stand in line because everybody's scared to death. And that's, you can see what consciousness can do. Now, if everyone changed their consciousness to it's all good, including COVID-19, oh my gosh, things would change, wouldn't it? I wouldn't have had to cancel my cruises that I was taking with Cunard. I would have been able to have a vacation this summer. All things would be nice. Now I have to drive out of town to go to a decent restaurant where I can actually sit in the restaurant. In San Francisco, you can't go indoors and sit in a restaurant. We've had, I think maybe out of the 770,000 people that live in, and whatever the number is, 700,000 people anyway, that live in San Francisco, 5,000 have died of COVID-19. How many of them would have died anyway of something else is never entered on the picture. But because of that, we can't go in a restaurant. Now that's collective consciousness. That's how collective thinking can change the world. Can we change things? Yeah, stop being worried and this whole thing will go away. I put a video online early on in this COVID-19, at about the beginning of April, where I said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself, quoting FDR when he's trying to get rid of the depression. Fear. So yes, we could change this quite easily, just change our mind.
Brian Kramer asks, how can I develop a default emotional response of compassion toward human evil rather than hatred and anger?
That's really tough. You know, we have a lot of homeless in San Francisco, and they're just living on the street, and they've been there long before any of this started. In fact, when we were at 1.7% unemployment, the roaring economy that we had going on, we still had these homeless on the street saying they couldn't find a job. And my reaction to them is, you damn liar, of course you can find a job. Not enough people are applying for jobs. We've only got less than 2% unemployment. You know, we couldn't find enough people to do all the things that needed to be done. And they're living in a tent on the street with a sign, I need help. Yeah. And I personally have feelings about that of you lazy SOB, you know, that's what I want to say to him, you lazy so-and-so. But they're a person just like us, and they have their own problems, their own reasoning, their own obstacles that they're trying to overcome that have forced them to end up thinking that the best thing to do is to live in a tent on the street. They have their own issues and their own problems. Some of them are, not very many of them, but some of them are former Vietnam veterans who were forced to go over there and kill people. It's a difficult situation. Some of them have a lot of remorse with those things, and they're looking at their life now, and so they've taken up drugs, and that's why they're living on the street. Each of them deserves some compassion. How to automatically have a compassionate reaction. When the guy cuts in front of me because he's got to get into that off lane, you know, to take the off ramp, and he's coming from the high speed lane to the low speed lane and down the off ramp, and he cuts in front of me on the freeway and almost kills everyone coming towards him and heads down that ramp, my reaction's not too positive towards that person. I can't understand why their life is so important that they have to endanger everyone else on the freeway. I see it all the time. The one that's the funniest is there will be 40 cars in line to try to go down the off ramp, and these people are running their car up and trying to cut in just before the first car. Why do they think they're so important? I try to have compassionate feelings towards these people. So my compassionate feeling might be, I guess they didn't have any parents to teach them not to cut in line. When we were kids, we went to school and we had to stand in line outside the class and learn not to cut in line. How come does this poor person not have enough parenting or teaching or something to realize that we're all in this together? We're all in the line. Go get in the end of the line and wait like the rest of us. So hard to have compassion for those things. And what you have to do is you have to think, okay, so that guy cuts in line and I wait a little longer, but maybe I don't have a wreck on the way home because I wasn't there for the wreck. And a little later you drive past the wreck that you didn't have, that someone else did have. And so you have to look at those things as, oh, that guy that cut in front of me must have been an angel to slow me down so I wouldn't be there. You have to take a different perspective. You have to really step out of it and not be so subjectively into it and objectively look from the outside at it. What's really going on here? Why did I get a flat tire today? Why did this happen to me today? Why did each of those things? You have to look at it that way. Are they so bad? And then you become more compassionate. You realize that the evil thing happening might not be as bad as you think. Very difficult for me to come up with that kind of feeling when I'm standing in Auschwitz, when I'm standing in a room at the, I forgot the name, Becken, whatever it is, that's near Auschwitz there. And I'm in a room with 8,000 heads of hair that were harvested from the Jewish people, and 1 million pairs of glasses that were harvested from the Jewish people that they were killing. It's hard for me to find compassion for those Nazis. Very, very hard. I want to agree with the Mossad, go find them and kill them. On the other hand, when it's a little easier, the homeless, something like that, I can find it. So you have to find that compassion by being objective and stepping outside of the subjective thing that's in front of you.
I suppose it would help to have some compassion for yourself as well. If you don't always feel compassion for others, feel it for yourself for not being as compassionate as you'd like to be.
Yes, you have to have that. That's very good, Jeffrey. Yes, that's true too. You would hope someone had compassion for you.
Yeah. Now we've been going an hour. It's 1 o'clock, but I'd like to go another half hour if you have the time, Alan.
Sounds good to me.
Dan O'Farrell asks, do souls always learn from life to life? Are there souls that forget more and more from life to life?
Okay. First off, I don't have a definitive scientific good answer for that. I would like to think that they all learn. Sometimes I meet up with people that to me seem like must be going backwards. But I believe that the evidence we have in the universe for a progression from however you want to look at the universe, and I'm going to do it this way, from the Big Bang onward as we evolve, and first the bacteria, the scum form, and if you've watched bacteria have its way that the bacteria on the outside collects the food and sends it to the bacteria on the inside of the thing, and these are individual bacteria working with each other. They get the community and they have a way of working, and we evolve from that pond scum. If you can take that evolution and understand it, I think that the universe is evolving into a higher and higher level of consciousness, and finally we have mankind, and we're evolving forward. Then it must be that all of us, even those individuals who look like they're going backwards, are evolving forwards. So the trend in the universe over all of our science and all of our study is that we're evolving upwards. There had to be just to have the chemicals that our body's made out of. We had to have stars for billions of years, and they had to form and unform, and they had to explode, and they had to spread out through the universe. And when you look at all that, you realize it takes a long time for consciousness to arrive where it's arrived at. And these people hopefully are evolving upwards. It appears from all of our science that the universe is improving. It's evolving upwards. So from a scientific viewpoint, they must be getting better. Now, from a metaphysical viewpoint, it wouldn't serve a good purpose if they were going backwards.
Here's an interesting question from Haji Turkeltaub, who asks, what about earthbound ghosts? Are they bound for eternity without the help of a medium? I know many spiritualist groups have rescue circles where they try to help these earthbound souls. What can you say about that?
Okay. The thing that it appears in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it continues, but that's the earliest that we've seen it. It talks about souls that are just standing there on the other side. They're just standing there. And as soon as they decide in their mind to be concerned about someone besides themselves, they will be ministered unto. Angels will come and help them move forward. As long as it's me, their ego, as long as it's ego, they're going to stand there, and the earthbound souls that are stuck in the next level. And St. Paul in 2 Corinthians talks about going to the third heaven. So there's a level above the earth, which we call earthbound, it appears. And those earthbound souls that haunt places, poltergeists, things that haunt, and I've had a small experience with some of these things, they don't know that they're dead, haven't figured that out yet, and they need to move on. They need to move, and those rescue circles that you're talking about usually tell them move on to the light. Edmund G. Randall, who worked with Emily French for years, he worked with her for almost 22 years, and about half of the sessions that they held, spirits on the other side would bring these earthbound souls to them, because the earthbound souls would listen to Randall and Emily, but they wouldn't listen to the other spirits around them. They were afraid of those other spirits. And so the spirits would bring them to this rescue. And about half of the sessions that he held, he would have 2 or 3 of those come through. Same thing happened for Arthur Finley, working with John Sloan. They would have that occasionally, where they'd have some earthbound spirit move on. The earthbound spirit basically is a person who doesn't believe in an afterlife, so therefore they couldn't be dead because they're still in existence. So they kind of haunt this level. That's why we try to demonstrate as often as possible that the afterlife is real, so that when you die, like Barbara Levine says to me, she says, through a medium, she says, Alan, thank you so much for telling me, because I saved me so much time on this side, because I knew I wouldn't be dead when I was dead. And that's one of the best messages I've ever gotten. And she sent that through a medium who didn't know me at the time. I know that medium now, but she said, thank you so much for telling me I wouldn't be dead. And these earthbound souls don't know that they're dead. And that's the big problem. That's what the rescue circles do. They're trying to help those people realize you're dead. You can move on now. It's okay. Think about the fact that you're no longer here. And so that happens. And I bumped into one that was 96 years after he died, was still haunting the place. I've been there, seen that. So they're real, they're out there. The rescue circles apparently do good work. That's what I can tell you about that.
Here's a question from Dagmar Trinks. Did the pandemic happen because I'm addicted to being outraged?
the pandemic happened. Maybe for you individually, that's how it is presenting itself as an obstacle for you, so you can get over being outraged. It may, it has its individual effect on a lot of people. I've noticed that many people are enjoying being at home, and they didn't have time to be at home before. So everyone's getting a different lesson out of this thing. So your question, did it happen for me personally? Yes, it did. It did happen for you personally. And it is probably changing your perspective on a number of things. And that's what's happening for all of us. We're all having our perspective changed. And the pandemic is doing that. It is probably a good obstacle lesson for you in your outrage and learning not to be outraged. So it's one of those things. It's like, I early on when we finished high school, we either got drafted and sent to Vietnam to sit in a foxhole and get shot at, or you joined the Navy. I joined the Navy. Talk about outrage. The government says, we're going to draft you. I'm sorry, you finished high school. Now we want to kill you. We're going to train you to be a killer or get killed. Talk about outrage. You don't even have to face the draft. What's so bad about COVID-19? You're not being drafted. You have to wear a mask. I had to go pick up my barber and bring her over here to cut my hair because of the situation we have here in the city. And she was saying she heard about 2 people on Delta Airlines that refused to wear their masks. So the plane had to go back and dump them off. And she said, I bet they can't get on a plane again. No airline will have them. Why would they do that? So talk about outrage. Outrage is when the government says we're going to draft you and have you shot at. That's when you should be outraged. And I've served my country, and I'm a veteran, and I'm just saying we get outraged at stupid things. Maybe that's what you need. That's what this is about for you. Is nobody's drafting you. Nobody's going to shoot you. You don't have to decide, should I go to Canada or should I stay in the States? What's your outrage about COVID-19?
Incognito is asking about, once you die, why do you still need to have an ego boundary and a personal identity? Can't you just sort of, I think he's saying, let go of all of that so that you have more freedom?
Exactly the situation. Those people that are standing there, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and from then on, we still know about this. The people who are standing there are stuck in their ego. If they just drop the ego and become we and us instead of me, that's exactly what they need to do. So some people are able, as they take off the flesh, the jacket of this physical body, to leave the ego behind with it. We're still individuate. We still individuate in the afterlife. They're still individuals, but not this ego, this I'm first thing. That gets left behind. Those who can't leave it behind are kind of stuck in the next level above the earth. They're just kind of stuck there. And once they get over that, then they can move on. We see a lot of it around places where there was a murder. A person says, why was I murdered? Why was I killed? And they're still sitting there with the I, me, ego. And so that's why murder sites are often haunted.
Here's a question from 6-7. Does everyone live in the same reality?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. What is real, said the rabbit, No, they don't. They think they do. We all think that the reality that we see is the same one everyone else sees, and it isn't. Our reality is based on what we feel. Now, there is a lot of community reality, okay? And the community reality is, I'm sitting in the middle of San Francisco and I'm looking at downtown, and everyone else pretty much sees the same downtown that I do. And that's community reality. Okay, there's a lot of that, and we create that as a community event. The whole earth is that way. I often look at some of the trees, the gnarled um, trees that grow down by Monterey, and they grow along where the wind blows, and the wind has worked on those trees for many years, and they look, some of them are 1,000 years old, and that wind has been blowing on them and making them grow that way. And I say, so how did that reality, since we create the universe 23 septillion times a second, it remakes itself in front of us out of the basically the consciousness it recreates here in the matter, in the physical. How does that tree, thousands of years old, grow like that if we're all doing this out of our consciousness? Well, go back to before the slime that began to grow, the scum began to grow on the earth after we had water and all of those things. Go back to the stars. How did the consciousness envision the universe? It took a consciousness to precipitate the wave function to create the Big Bang. It had to be a consciousness looking at that. That consciousness is us. That God is us. It's our consciousness. As again, I said, the consciousness, we're a grain of sand on a beach. And the beach is all these pieces of sand. That consciousness created the universe so that we could evolve to be what we are today. So it thought that up. It made that happen. And that's how we can affect things. Our thoughts change things. Our thoughts, if you look at, like I said, with the fear and the COVID-19, our thoughts create or uncreate things. And we control our individual thoughts. So if we individually have good thoughts, we then have the situation that many metaphysical people speak of, a critical mass. When you reach critical mass, you have an explosion with a nuclear situation. Critical mass with thoughts works the same way. You can study and go research this, the 100 monkey syndrome. Okay, and all the monkeys on one island were washing, one monkey started washing the clams or whatever they're eating a certain way. And pretty soon all the other monkeys were copying what she was doing. And pretty soon the monkeys on the next island, too far away for a monkey to swim over there, were doing it. We know with chemistry, when we form a new compound, when we form that compound, it'll form several different ways. That the two things or three things will come together in several different structures. And finally, chemically, it'll find a structure it likes. It's the most convenient structure. And then that new chemical compound will form that way in every laboratory around the world. All the laboratories will assume the same basic, this is the good structure to use. And nobody told the other people in the other lab use the other structure. The chemistry said, oh, I got it. And then the conscious universe says, oh, that's the way we're going to do it. And off it goes. This is how thought, consciousness works in the universe. When it finds the correct way to do it, that's how it's going to do it. And the universe works that way. And people say, no, that can't be. Yeah, that's right. They wish it wasn't that way, but it is that way. And so materialists want to say, oh, that's too simple. No, that's not simple. It's very complicated, but that's how it works. So that you can affect the thoughts in society by what you think.
Here's a question from Fernando Guerrero. He says, I'd like to hear some insights from Alan about groups of souls who reincarnate together.
Yes, that's a very good way to describe it, to look at it. Now, we're always putting concepts so that we can see it from our own physical life, from what we know here. We're trying to put things into concepts. So we see groups of souls traveling together. You might see it more like consciousness moving with itself. That group of souls is not necessarily the same individuals next time as they move along. That group of same consciousness people collect on the other side. On the other side, you're always with just those souls that are developed to the same position you are. I think about it this way. The thieves are stealing from the thieves. You can see this in the homeless population here on Earth, the thieves stealing from the thieves. And the people who aren't thieves are living in another level and not stealing from each other. You know, it's the same on the other side. It's not so much different from this Earth. So seeing groups of souls moving together, you might think about it this way. And as a scientist, I think about this. The scientists are all moving along together. The ones on the cutting edge, you know, Max Planck and then James Maxwell and David Bohm. These guys all talk to each other and they're moving along together. They're not a family. They're a group of souls that think alike, that are working on the cutting edge of where we're going with electricity and the power of our heart and all these things, what we're working with. They're all moving along together. And so as we go through reincarnation, if we reincarnate, if that's what we're going to do, if we choose to do that, how that works, I can't tell you because I'm not over there running the police system, how it works. You know, I can't regulate that. I don't know how that works. But let's suppose that we reincarnate, we choose to reincarnate. We may choose to reincarnate with a group of friends that we know, other individual souls that we've had experiences with before. And we may say, okay, you were the mother last time. I'm going to be the mother this time. And you were the kid. Now you get to be the father. And we probably do something like that and then come back into this environment and go through it again. People ask questions like, well, I was married 3 times. Which wife do I have to have on the other side when I get over there? Well, it's not like that. They aren't given in marriage over there. It isn't that way. And the reason it isn't that way is because we probably on that side no longer have this thing called sex, male and female and all of that, because we're not reproducing there. We're just us. And so we can be us, just ourselves. And we're all there together. And so it isn't male and female and mom and dad and all that. It's us, all these souls together. And think about it more that way. When you first get there, yeah, you may see grandma and she may walk up to you and say, hi, I'm grandma, you know, and to make you feel comfortable. But after a while, you may realize, oh, grandma, you were Einstein last time around. Gee, I didn't know that. You know, you may find all this stuff out that you didn't realize. And so you can't just, you know, people want me to define it this is how it is. Well, I can't say it's just exactly that way. But we do move in like-minded groups, both on this side and that side. And if we decide to reincarnate, maybe we come back in a group like that. And this is just us all trying to define what is it really like on that side. We really can only tell you what we know. I know these 2 things. I talk to a lot of people on that side as a medium, and I've been there myself. It's a pretty cool place.
Here's a question from Harlan Muller. It says, in life reviews, are you supposed to feel what has happened to all the animals that you've eaten?
The animals that you've eaten? Well, the animals that you interface with as an animal, your horse or your dog and that kind of thing, the ones that we eat, if you look at the environment, the world, it's based on animals eating animals. There's a lot of that. So you don't have a feeling, you don't sit there and say, oh, that cow that got killed out there, that was my steak last night. I enjoyed that steak. And do I have to talk to him about that? He was grown to be a beef cow. That was his purpose in life. And if you just go in the ocean, I love the ocean, I'm a naval architect, and you watch the sharks eat the sea lions, and the sea lions eating the salmon, and you watch everybody eating everybody else, you realize that that's part of the way the world was put together. Why we consciousness did it that way, I don't know. We think it's pretty bad for people in Fiji to eat other humans, but they used to do that. We think that's a bad thing. And it's all how we see it, how we feel about it. For some people, they just can't eat a beefsteak because it was somebody's cow, and so they want to be total vegan and vegetarian, and they're not going to eat any animals. But the science of what we see is animals eat animals. And if you're going to be that way about it, how does the plant feel when you eat that vegetable? You bite into that piece of celery. What does a piece of celery think? It's alive too. I have a lot of nice plants in my garden. And so don't get too hung up on that. It's not there. It's what you did to the other people and the animals that you dealt with. Were you mean to your horse? Were you good to your horse? Were you good to your bird that you have in a cage, or did you keep him in a cage when he should have been out being free? All those are value judgments that we have to make, and you can't. You should not become rigid about this is the way it must be. I don't mind if somebody's vegan, and I don't mind if they don't want to eat beef. I eat beef occasionally. Have a pastrami sandwich now and then. That's just the way I am. But I don't have to worry about that animal that I love ham, that pig that was grown just to be a ham. That's just the way that life is. So it's always been.
Oh, okay, here's a question from Incognito. Are certain mental illnesses merely opportunities to evolve states of consciousness that exist without the boundaries of time and memory?
I don't know. That could be. If reincarnation is an option that people have, they may have come here to just to go through that. I often think about the universe and say why we have all these different people having these different experiences. The consciousness, the conscious universe, God, if you will, wanted to have all these experiences, and so developed all these different places to have these experiences. And one experience would be to be without a leg. Another experience would be without what the world calls a properly put together mind. And so that consciousness comes and experiences all these different ways of seeing things. And that's what's going on there. And probably that person came here to experience in that way.
Here's a very interesting question from Greg Bistroff, who heard you mention that plants could be conscious. He says, what are we calling consciousness then? If a plant is conscious, why not a car or a computer?
Well, have you had your computer react to you when you were mad at it? I've had my computer react to me when I'm mad at it. So is the computer conscious? If, as I say, the universe is conscious, then the rocks out there are conscious. And so is the plant, and so is your computer, and so is your car. I've had some cars that act like they're conscious. If you get mad at your car, see what it does, okay? And if you get mad at your computer, see what it does. And if you're nice to your computer, see what it does. And then you realize the whole world is made out of consciousness. The basic particle at the lower, at the subatomic particles, string theory says it's a vibration. I say, no, it's a thought. It's an easier way to say the same thing. They've got the string theory has a vibrating string with no string, just a vibration, no string there. So an easier way to say that is a thought. Okay, the entire universe is conscious. How else could we have evolved consciousness out of a universe made of rocks and chemicals? The chemicals and the rocks must have been conscious to start with. Now that's the idealist theory that backs all this up, like Max Planck said in 1900, the matrix of the universe is mind.
And this will be the last question for today, Alan, from Salvador Morphin, who asks, is there a purpose to this reality, or is it just an eternal ongoing dream?
Well, that's a good question. If we're all the same consciousness, then that consciousness is having an eternal ongoing dream. Okay? And what's the purpose of that eternal ongoing dream? There seems to be an evolution upwards. We have some scientists have looked at 200 different things that had to go the way they did within a 1 percentage point, or we wouldn't have evolved humans with consciousness. And those 200 things had to all happen. So they obviously following a plan. You want to call that intelligent design? That's good. Intelligent design is exactly what I'm talking about. The universe seems to have a force which is causing it to move forward in the direction that it's going. We know that out there in the universe, we have dark matter that's 96% of the universe that we don't even discern. We discern 4% and think we know everything. There's 96% that we don't know. But it appears from the small percentage that we do know that things are moving in an upward direction. They're evolving upwards, they're evolving towards better. And so whether it's the conscious universe is having a big dream or we have a purpose remains to be seen, but it appears to me we have a purpose.
Alan, I want to thank you so much on behalf of the viewers for being with me today. You've really been very generous with your time, and I guess I should really thank the Spiritualist Church as well for letting you take a day off from your normal routine obligations there. This has been a wonderful conversation. I'm delighted. We will have a recording available for people who didn't catch the entire thing, and the recording will be up permanently. And I should let our viewers know that in 3 weeks from today, we'll be doing a live stream with philosopher Jason Reza Georgiani. So, Alan, thank you so much for being with me.
Jeff, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. Thank you for doing it.
And for those of you watching, thank you for being with us. And I will end the live stream now.